My name is Benton Stokes. I'm a former fundamentalist, post-evangelical worship leader, and songwriter. I enjoy wry Manhattans, roller coasters, and road trips, just not all at the same time.
I'm Elane O'Rourke, and I'm a teacher, an author, and a spiritual coach. I was a philosophy professor and a liberal pastor in a couple of former lives, and these days I love aha moments and not so dry martinis.
We have conversations about life and God with a queer perspective, over cocktails, like you. This is Cocktail Theology. Well, for a pink lady, this cocktail isn't very pink.
It really isn't. It is... And all I can figure is that when they outlawed red dye number 2, it became a sort of off pink white blade. It's been called a Karen.
From henceforth, this cocktail shall be known as a Karen.
All right, so I've never had one of these.
I haven't either, so this will be new for us both.
Okay.
I haven't tried this at all.
All right.
Huh, okay. Well...
So...
It's not bad. It's just, it's not very, I don't know. The booze is kind of kicking in after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those classic old school dessert cocktails where basically you get a lot of cream and then suddenly go, wow,
yeah,
there's alcohol in here.
Who knew?
But I gotta say, we don't need to do this again.
No, we don't have to do this one again.
Because if I'm going to have mostly cream with some alcohol in it, it'll be like a pie and a glass of bourbon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, it was worth trying. So remind me what was in this.
It was mostly gin. I mean, gin and heavy cream. And then it has some grenadine, some cherries, and some simple syrup.
Okay. I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah. Oh.
It definitely has that White Russian thing going on. You know what I mean? It's the cream plus a something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well.
So why are we drinking Karens?
Karens. Well, because today's topic is, or the question being posed is, was Jesus a wuss?
Okay, got it. Sorry, a little slow on the uptake. Okay, gotcha. We haven't done this in a while, so my sense of the coding of cocktails is not caught up. Okay, got it.
Yeah, so yeah, that's why. I thought it would be fun to have a cocktail that reads feminine, I guess.
That screams wuss.
That screams wuss. I don't know. Does it? Well, maybe it does scream wuss.
I'm sorry.
It screams disgruntled customer is what it screams. I need to see your manager.
No, I'm just trying to imagine either one of us walking up to the bar and sitting at the bar and saying, we want a pink lady made with cream, not egg white, made with proportionally less gin than anything else, with 3 cherries. I don't see that.
No.
We are too much for this cocktail.
We are both way too much for this cocktail.
All right. Okay. So why are we talking about was Jesus a wuss? Help me.
So something that's been happening lately, I mean, it's definitely come to the forefront lately, that is troubling to me, is in evangelical churches among men, there's this movement to be kind of this hyper masculine, man of the house. And I've read accounts of some of these men going up to pastors after sermons where Jesus was teaching things that Jesus taught and them telling the pastor, you know, that's not what our boys and our women need to hear about how Jesus is. We're going to need you to preach on other passages where Jesus is depicted as strong and, you know, commanding kind of, but definitely not these very kind of feminine traits of Jesus, the way they would describe them, of Jesus being, you know, gentle, being compassionate, being empathetic.
Humble.
And humble.
Okay.
Right. So that begs the question, okay, so is there anything in the Gospels that shows Jesus to be anything other than who he was and who we understand him to be. The only passage I can think of is when he turned tables over in the temple.
Okay. So I immediately go manosphere, right? I immediately go to bro culture and manosphere.
And that's where this is coming from, from the church side.
Okay.
Of bro culture.
Okay. Yeah, suddenly Mark Driscoll comes into my head.
And he is a huge proponent of this movement.
Because he's always been this guy.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start with this. Okay, let's go back to the strong idea.
Okay.
You represented them as saying that Jesus, in much of the way that people teach Jesus, is not strong. Mm-hmm. What do we think strong means in this context? Because this is actually a kind of an interesting question. Like, what is strength?
Yeah.
Right? There's a song that my daughter and I listen to in the car sometimes that is, I've forgotten the name of it, but it's a woman talking about how she's flipping out over her man being unfaithful or whatever he's being. Okay. Whatever he's being. Doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Her mother is telling her, straighten up, hide it. Don't show that you're flipping out in public. Mm-hmm. Okay. And two different ways of handling stress. But the way the singer phrases it is that her mother's generation wasn't as strong as hers.
Oh.
And I'm like, that's interesting, because having some reserve, being able to control your output, choosing your times requires a tremendous amount of strength.
It does.
So that's an interesting thing. So let's stay with that for a second. Mm-hmm. I think that depending upon what culture, subculture you're in, turning the tables, it's a great example, either is a sign of strength or power, mm-hmm. or it's a sign of desperation, mm-hmm. or it's a sign of just losing your cool,
yeah,
or it's a sign of weakness. Right?
Yeah.
Like, we keep talking about how when Jesus is before Pilate, at least in one of the Gospels, he doesn't defend himself.
Right.
That's seen as a sign of strength.
Yes.
But then throwing over the table is a sign of strength. Mm-hmm. I have trouble holding those in the same hand.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to hold those in the same hand, if I'm going to say that being able to be silent and not protest your own innocence, mm-hmm. and being able to overturn the tables are both signs of strength, then strength is a much bigger category.
Yes.
Than the Jesus is a wuss worriers would probably accept. Mm-hmm. Like, if you get rid of that breadth of category, mm-hmm. then it seems to me like the only Jesus they can really want to hear from is the Christ, not Jesus, Christ, uh-huh. in Revelation.
Yeah.
The sword guy.
Yeah. And a lot of the, and I'm not well versed in this movement at all, but it seems like the verses that are brought up are either Revelation or Old Testament.
And he's in neither of those, really.
Right.
Jesus is not in either one.
Right, exactly. Right.
At all.
Right. So if you actually look at the Gospels.
Oh, no, don't do that.
Right. Don't preach from the Gospels.
I mean, the Gospels are all about, Jesus caring about things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but see, if you can't preach from the Gospels, then that gets rid of the whole overthrowing the tables, too.
That's true.
Okay. The conclusion I draw just from this little piece of this is that the folks to whom we're referring aren't actually interested in Jesus at all.
No, they actually aren't.
I think that's the problem, mm-hmm. right? Jesus, to my reading through the Gospels, is a very complex and layered person, and thoughtful, mm-hmm. focused, mm-hmm. makes mistakes, recognizes them, corrects them, mm-hmm. is very clear and firm. He is not wobbly.
No, not in the least.
He's not at all wobbly. To me, that's a sign of strength.
It is.
Okay. So the idea that he doesn't waffle, mm-hmm. to me, is a sign of knowing who he is, what he's aiming for, and going in that direction confidently. Yes. That's strength.
That is absolutely strength.
And I think they would agree that that's a strength, a sign of strength, mm-hmm. right? Okay.
Yeah, probably, okay. I guess.
I'm just saying, that's, you see what you want, you go for it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we take that view of Jesus, then that view of Jesus, if you ignore his behaviors that connected with his strength, if you ignore all those, then that Jesus could be seen as strong by these people. But if one cannot be strong and feed hungry people, you're not talking about Jesus.
No.
At that point, we're no longer talking about Jesus. So there we are.
Yeah.
That's a problem for me.
It's a huge problem. And I mean, all this ties right back into the Christian nationalist movement, because what they really want is a version of Jesus that backs up who they are. Like, they want a justification, not even a justification, because they feel completely justified.
Symbol.
Yeah, a symbol.
Right.
That supports them, endorses their behavior.
Right.
Agrees that, men need to be heads of the household, need to have successful careers. They need to have,
Okay, Jesus' career not so successful.
Right? Right? See, how do they get there? But like the way they parent, the way they are husbands, the way they, conduct their business at church or in their communities or at their work. I mean, all of that is just like they're looking for endorsements of what they're doing. And they believe that Jesus agrees with them that that's the way they should be leading their homes and behaving at church. And I don't understand how they're getting, like, how are they getting there? But then I don't understand Christian nationalism either. Like, how are they getting there?
Yeah.
Like, how
do you put Christian nationalism together?
How do you put Christian and nationalism together? And then especially when you throw Donald Trump into the mix, like, how does that happen?
Right. To me, it sounds like Christendom.
It's exactly like Christendom because it's Christianity and empire.
That's right. That's all it is.
Cutting a backroom deal.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the thing. That's all it is, right? So for listeners who haven't heard me go on this rant before, there's a difference. Actually, it's not a rant. It's a teaching.
It's a teaching.
There's a difference between Christendom, which is the empire of spreading the Christian worldview, a Christian worldview, to people who don't have it. Now, it doesn't have to be associated with the idea that you also take their land and everything else. But it is the idea that the reach of Christianity should consistently be expanded and absorb non-Christian places.
Yes.
Okay. And Christendom, like all forms of empire, sees the spread and absorption as being the primary goal.
Yes, right.
Right? That's
right.
the number one thing. That's
right.
what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And if you think about things like the Crusades or, other really despicable parts of our history, what you're really talking about is empire, the goal of empire, with a cross being used as the bludgeon or as the pillar of fire, I guess, in front, right? But the idea is that you take whatever is a strong symbol for people and you use it to support your view. That's how you do empire. So Caesar was both the symbol and the ruler, but mostly the symbol of the Roman Empire, right?
Yeah.
Queen Elizabeth I was the symbol of the British Empire, as was Queen Victoria, right? So you use whichever symbol you've got to back up whatever your version of empire is. That is how empire works.
It gives them a why. This is why we're doing this.
It not only gives them a why, it gives them this is why we cannot be assailed.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is bigger than all of us.
This is, yeah. This undefeatable even.
That's right. This is capital E England, capital R Rome, capital whatever. That's what empire is. That is the nature of empire. And when you add Christianity to it, you get Christendom, which is the culture of the empire of Christianity, if you will.
Yeah.
And or you get Christian nationalism.
Yeah.
And or you get Christian socialism. Don't get me started on that one. Whatever the thing is, that's not because I'm against socialism. It's because that's what the Nazis believed. That's what you get. Given that that's all this is, why does it upset you?
Why does it upset me?
Yes, you personally. I have lots of reasons it could upset me.
mean,
Why does it upset you?
Well, well, this whole thing for a decade has been upsetting to me because you've got Christians endorsing policies and personalities and ideas that run antithetical to Jesus and Jesus' teachings. And yet they name it as Christian, and they try to impose it upon all the rest of us as Christian in big scare quotes. And even those of us who are Christians are like, wait a minute, hang on a minute.
Right.
But they're just like bulldozing through.
Okay.
And with a Congress and most of all a president that is not just empathetic, but are waving the same flag, you know, it just creates this idea that this is the church. This is what it's like when Christians take over a place. And as a Christian myself, I find that really offensive, that other Christians are behaving that way and other people are suffering, really suffering, because of the things they are imposing on the entire nation. Now, I didn't live through other empires, the ones that you're describing, but when you look at history, you can see that the same thing that's happening here has happened elsewhere. Those empires don't exist anymore the way they did back then. Rome fell. So that doesn't actually bode very well for what's happening in America right now. If you look at it that way, through that lens, it seems like this is unsustainable based on what history tells us.
Isn't that good?
Yes.
Okay.
That part's good.
Okay,
That part,
okay,
I'm not upset about that.
Okay.
So I'm just upset at the behavior of these people. And as somebody that has been through Christian men's groups in the past.
Okay.
And I already have my thoughts on all of that. All of that.
We can talk about that another
That's
time.
another episode.
Because I've got energy for that one myself.
Yeah. When they're using Jesus and the cross as a bludgeon, and they're saying, this is who we are, and you better back up because Jesus is on our side.
Right.
That's a problem.
Right.
For lots and lots of reasons.
Right. Okay. So they're misrepresenting Jesus.
Yep.
Using the cross as a bludgeon.
Yep.
Much like the KKK.
Yep.
I just want everybody to sit with that one for a second. They're using Jesus, they're using the cross as a bludgeon and as a symbol that is unassailable. And doing harm to other people because of it.
Yep.
Okay. Seems to me the other problem that you would face in a way that I don't face is that this version of masculinity is not your version of masculinity.
No, it's not.
So how does, I mean, if you get into yourself about this, how does it feel to have that version of masculinity being the one that is defining masculinity at this point in history? Just as queer folk and gay men were starting to be able to have some room.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I just want to push against it. Like, I deny every bit of that. Like, none of that is real. I didn't parent that way. I wasn't that kind of husband. I'm not that kind of guy in the world.
Yeah.
None of that applies to me. And even when I attended a men's group to kind of butch up, it actually pointed me in the other direction.
Right.
Because that is so not who I am. And in my mind, that is so not who Jesus was either.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, it makes me angry that this is either directly or obliquely, depending on the conversation, pointed at gay men as well.
Yes.
That we aren't man enough.
That's right.
And it's pointing at women who aren't subservient.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Also, what that does is it discounts people who don't fit their model. So men who aren't married with wives, men who aren't parents, men who aren't successful in their careers.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, and women who aren't married, or women who have careers instead of being home raising their children. Like, it rails against everything that isn't their little tiny description and definition of what is okay as husband, father, career guy, man in the world, strong man, or whatever.
Right.
Like, none of it fits their mold.
Right.
And so they keep imposing all this crap on the rest of us to try to make us get in line,
right,
or punish us otherwise.
Right. And I think that's what it comes down to, right? Is that there is for those of us who have gone through various iterations, both of ourselves and of the world, there's this sense that the walls are closing in again.
Yeah.
Right? Because the people in power are saying, your box is too big. Your tent is too big. Here's your box. Step into it or go die somewhere.
Yeah.
That's literally
That's it.
like when you basically want the poor to starve to death or to disappear into the woodwork. That's what you're saying.
That's what you're saying.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that we, because I agree with you, we don't want that version of society to be the loudest voice.
No.
We certainly don't want it to have the kind of power it does to inflict harm on other people.
Right.
Okay. So those are two very social things,
Yes.
right? We don't want them to use Jesus, not even Christ. We're going to set aside Christ for a minute, but use Jesus as a symbol of that. Partly because it's inaccurate, partly because it gives Christians an even worse name.
Yeah.
And partly because it's just distorting.
Yeah.
Right? So there's all of that. I want to go back to Jesus. I want to go back to what Jesus would think of these folks.
Okay.
Okay. The phrase vipers.
A brood of vipers.
A brood of vipers comes to mind.
Yeah.
So when Jesus saw that the people in power were causing others to stumble, inspiring others to behave badly, to not treat their neighbors well, to treat their slaves badly, and they had slaves, all of those things. It was, you brood of vipers, you create rules that no one can live by except you.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay? So Jesus, in one of his wussier moments, calls the powers that be brood of vipers. And these are not precisely the words, but essentially says you are condemned for this. You whitewash the outside of your tombs while inside you are rotting.
That's right.
So Jesus would be very strong and masculine about this were he to talk to them about it.
He would.
So I am perfectly happy for them to claim that Jesus as theirs.
Yeah.
But of course they can't.
No, they can't.
Because the thing that Jesus had and the thing that a lot of us who try to follow, not everybody, and we don't all do it all the time ever. We try to be humble and say, okay, where am I screwing up? Where am I defying this standard? Where am I not being the person I want to be?
Right.
So they can claim that Jesus, but without the ability to say, maybe he's talking to me. Doesn't matter who they claim.
Yeah, it's true.
It's irrelevant. So really what they're doing is they're claiming Caesar. And as we know, Caesars eventually fall.
They do.
Meantime, we have to stand up against Caesar and give people food who don't have it.
That's right.
So no, Jesus was not a wuss. Did we solve that?
I think we did.
Okay.
Listeners, what do you think? We would love to hear from you. If you have run into this, or even if this is a position that maybe you once took and now you're going, I don't know how I feel about that now. We would love to hear from you. We always love hearing from you guys. We like to hear ideas for cocktails. And
This is not one of them.
this is not...
No more Karens in our cocktail bar.
No.
All right, I'm fine.
No
Sorry.
more Karens. Please do reach out. Cocktailtheology.com is where we are.
It's good to be back.
And it's great to be back with you guys. Till next time.
Bye.
Funny how the view can change, how life just seems to rearrange itself, no matter what it was. I don't know how it goes, but look, moving on feels pretty good. Moving on feels pretty good.
If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and hit subscribe wherever you're listening right now. We welcome your comments, questions, and ideas for conversations and for cocktails. Please get in touch with us at our website, cocktailtheology.com. Cocktail Theology is a production of SFS. Our theme song is Moving On Feels Pretty Good, recorded by yours truly, Benton Stokes. You can find my music wherever you stream your favorite artists. Join us next Thursday for another new episode.